Hello, lovelies. Thanks for joining Hearthside Story Corner. Today we will be continuing our voyage together with Birdling in Part 7 of The Cruise of the Little Dipper by Susanne Langer. So sit back and enjoy this animated story with me. In the cove and under the rock ran a deep cave that he guessed at once would be the entrance to Shag's palace, where you could go down into the deep without drowning, as the mermen and mermaids do. Very quietly he fastened his boat to the rock, then climbed onto the gunwale and dived like a dolphin into the deep, dark, ripply water. Yes, this was the entrance to the palace of King Shag. At the bottom of the cave was a winding stairway, like the inside of a huge shell. Strange, fantastic fish swam up and down and churned up the water, so that it was very hard for Birdling to keep his balance. But fortunately they did not see him, so he crept on slowly down the steps. Suddenly he saw a gleam of light, and he felt sure it must be from Shag's palace. Faster and faster he ran down the wet, mossy stairs, till a current of water caught him and took him all the way down just as a fly goes down the hole in a washbowl. When he landed at the foot of the stairs, he was sitting on golden sands, and the bright lights blinded his eyes.
"Why, what's this?" said a thundering voice in his ear, and a huge fin picked him up. He looked up and saw Shag himself, a huge silvery fish with long whiskers and pop eyes, and a golden crown on his head. He was very hideous, and Birdling was terribly frightened, but he looked all around hoping to see the prince. "I don't know who you are," said Shag, "but you look as if you'd make a nice little morsel. I will let you have one chance for your life before I eat you. You shall come and see the wonderful treasures I have collected, and if you are able to pick out the most precious jewel in my vault, I will let you go. You shall have the jewel for a prize, and I will give you 1 day's grace before pursuing you with my soldiers."
So Birdling was led down some more long stairs to the cellar of the palace, where shining jellyfish lights hung from the ceiling. In their dim radiance he saw a heap of treasure, such as no one had ever seen in all the world. Diamonds that shone like stars, rubies and sapphires and emeralds, brooches and necklaces, pearl-set combs, wonderful pins and lockets and vessels of hammered gold. Then Birdling noticed a queer locket lying close to his foot. It seemed to be made of 2 big oyster shells closed with a band of tin. There was nothing very precious about it. But it must be precious, or it wouldn't be here, he thought quickly. While Shag waved his whiskers in a bored and superior way, and his soldiers craned their necks to see Birdling, the boy suddenly stooped and picked up the locket. "I choose this," he said, and held it up with both hands. Shag uttered a howl of rage. "He has guessed! He has guessed!" The bodyguard drew back in terror as their king beat the water with his fins, till a cloud of mud came up from the floor of the cave and his crown slipped over one eye. Now he would really have liked to eat up Birdling, but of course the soldiers had all heard the rules of the game, so he had to abide by his word. Birdling was escorted back to the hall and allowed to go up the winding stairs, back to the Little Dipper, the heavy oyster shell under his arm. It seemed to him about as big as a suitcase, but harder to carry because it had no handle. No one knows how he could have ever carried it to the top of the stairs, had he not met a seahorse who gave him a ride. "Hey-ho!" he cried, when he stood once more aboard the Little Dipper. "Are you asleep or awake down there in the hold?" "Awake!" cried one voice. "Asleep," murmured all the others. "Then wake up, for we must flee. We have 1 day of grace, and then Shag will pursue us. Heave the anchors and hoist the sails." So he raised the trap-door of the hold, and the shrimps climbed out, looking very shamefaced and small, as well they might. And in a few minutes the Little Dipper was under sail. When the rock was well out of sight and the Little Dipper making good speed, Birdling gave the wheel to the first mate and decided to open the oyster locket. It took 3 shrimps and the captain himself to move the heavy band of tin that held the 2 half-shells together, but at last they fell apart. And what do you suppose was inside? A perfect little bedroom, all wrought of finest gold, with a canopy bed of rosy silk, and a tiny chair and table, and even a dresser, and in the bed, on pillows of down, lay the young fairy prince. When the locket opened and the light shone into his room, he rubbed his eyes and said, "What time is it?" "Time to go home," replied Birdling.
Thanks again, lovelies. That is the end of our story time today. Please like and subscribe to join me for part 8 of The Cruise of the Little Dipper, coming soon, and have a marvelous day. Goodbye.